Welcome to part 2 of the FocalRig tutorial series. In the previous video we made a character look around and have foot IK without any aim offset animations. In this video we'll add weapon handling using only two animations, one for holding it and one for reloading it. Despite that, we'll be able to aim in any direction without any aim offsets, and we'll have procedural aim down sights and procedural kick. The procedural aiming will be so precise that we'll do hit traces directly from the muzzle, and they will land exactly where the camera is aiming. At the same time, all the offsets introduced by the reloading animation will be preserved. First of all, we want to see what this rifle will look like when attached to our character in the animation editor. So we open our character and its skeletal mesh and then its skeleton, and under the right hand we'll be using a socket. So under this socket we'll attach our weapon when we spawn it. And we want to preview it right here. So we just right click on it and add SKM rifle. And let's see what it looks like when we preview it with an actual rifle pose. And we see that it's not aligned. So we need to tweak the position of the socket so that it aligns exactly with the weapon, so that you could simply spawn the weapon and parent it to this socket and have it exactly aligned with the animation. So let's do that now. And now it's aligned. Let's hit save. Now let's create a weapon blueprint. In the end, it will be a base class for all the weapons, but for now we'll hard code it to be just the rifle. We'll call it BP weapon. And we're going to give it a skeletal mesh component. And we're going to hard code that to be SKM rifle. Now let's open our character blueprint and add a begin play event during which we're going to spawn this weapon. Give it some sort of transform, doesn't matter what, we'll override it anyway, and then attach it to our skeletal mesh component on the socket hand grip R. And we're going to make it snap to that. Now if we hit play, we'll see that the character has the gun attached to the right hand, but the animations are still as if there was no gun. Let's fix that. We'll need to open the animation blueprint of our character. And there, just before the control rig, add a layered blend per bone node, so that we can add the rifle holding animation onto just the upper body. Starting at a bone, let's say spine 02. And now if we hit play, we'll see that the animation is properly layered onto the upper body. However, the weapon does not actually aim where you're looking at yet. Let's open the control rig of this character and get it into the right preview pose. Now we need to make sure that this muzzle points exactly at the target. There needs to be a bone or a null at the muzzle with the x-axis pointing forward. There already happens to be a muzzle null in the default UE5 skeleton, but it's nowhere near the actual muzzle. So let's put it in the right spot first. We'll use a set relative transform that sets the weapon R muzzle relative to the thing to which we attach the gun, which is the hand grip R. We'll make that a transform. And we'll use direct manipulation to get it into the right spot. Now we have a bone or an element that points exactly along the actual muzzle direction. Now we just need to reorient the arms to make that point at the target. That is done by the aim weapon node. You just give it the target and you configure it for the two-handed setup to aim weapon R muzzle. It configures all the properties. You connect it, and now the muzzle points at the target. Now if we hit play, we see that the gun actually follows where you're aiming at. You will notice that if you come close to a wall, it ends up clipping through the character's body. It also clips if you aim too far down. Let's fix that. In the control rig, you can preview the same effect happening by just moving the target around. First of all, it gets pushed back too hard when you move the target closer to the body. You can fix this by increasing the minimum distance to pivot over here. The second thing is body depenetration. When you aim like this, you want to prevent the stock of the gun from clipping into the character's body. Under body depenetration, first let's enable debug. First off, we need to tell it where the contact points are, and we need to enable the weight so that depenetration is enabled. You can see the upper body bones are now highlighted. Now we need to tell it where the stock is. Thinks it's here, we need to push it a bit further back, like so. And let's move it. Let's add another point here, since the stock has multiple parts. And a bit further back. Like so. Now if you hit play, you'll notice that the gun never penetrates into the body, no matter where you aim. Now let's make it so when you press and hold the right mouse button, the character does aim down sights. We'll add a variable for that called aim down sights, make it public so it can be set externally. And we'll use the smooth toggle node to control the weight of the aim down sights effect. Hit compile and let's enable debug. And you will see that when we toggle it, smoothly transitions between hipfire and aiming down sights. Now let's put the sights at the actual sights instead of the default offset from the muzzle. See that the gun wobbles a bit, that's actually the idle sway. Let's disable that for now. And then simply edit the sights offset from the muzzle to get it into the right spot. Just like that. I prepared an input action for aiming down sights. It's a simple Boolean toggle, which is connected to the right mouse button in our input mapping context. So in the third person character, we just add a handler for it, aim down sights, which will control a Boolean, which will be true for as long as we're holding it. So let's just add a variable aim down sights. And connect it up like so. And then in the ABP, need to expose this pin that we added in the control rig. And let's add another property access where we just get our character and on that get that Boolean. Now that variable is connected to the control rig. So now when we hit play and I right click and hold and release, we see that the gun gets into aim down sights mode. Now let's make it so we can shoot the weapon with the left mouse button. First of all, we need to take the weapon that we spawn in our third person character and expose it to our inputs. using enable input, and we need to give it our player controller. So we're gonna make a pure cast from our actual controller. Get controller. Now if we open BP weapon, we're going to be able to use all the input events that we can also use in our character. So input action attack. And we're going to set it up so that it triggers a custom event fire one shot. And so that it wants to keep doing the firing as you hold the button. So for as long as you keep holding it, the triggered event will be called every frame. So we just do this. We just put a do once on it. And we're going to fire one shot. And then we're going to put a retriggerable delay for some duration between shots. Tweak this variable to control the fire rate of the weapon, and then just feed that into the reset. First, let's add some gunshot audio. I've prepared a meta sound source that has a fire one shot event, which will trigger with every shot. So on BP weapon, under the skeletal mesh, we add an audio component, let's call it gunshot, which has MSS rifle assigned. And all we have to do is call execute trigger parameter fire one shot. Now if we hit play and press the left mouse button, we'll hear the gunshots happen. Now let's make the weapon actually do some line tracing and do damage to the things that it hits. Our skeletal mesh for the weapon already has a muzzle socket, so we're going to use that to fire the trace from that. Called muzzle. It's going to be in world space. And we're going to use that to do a line trace. Same in the visibility channel. From our muzzle to a location somewhat in front of it. Make a new variable called range, and this will give us a location this many centimeters in front of the weapon. So let's make it 100 meters and trace from here to there. Now we check if we hit anything, and if we did, we break our hit and check who it is that we hit and apply point damage to that actor. Let's call that base damage and have that be 1. We need to provide the hit from direction, so we'll just take the trace end minus trace start, normalize that, that'll be the direction, and feed that into here. And feed the hit here as well. Make the instigator the same as what the weapon itself has. The damage causer is self. The damage type will be configurable. And we'll set the default to just damage type. And the base damage to, let's say, 10. Now let's enable debug drawing on this for a duration of 5 seconds and try playing with it. Now we see the traces come out of the gun and they align with where the camera is looking at, even though we're literally just spawning the bullets out of the muzzle on the weapon. Now let's add some kick to the weapon when you shoot it. Under aim weapon, under kick, we have a time of last shot variable, which will feed from the actual weapon. So we'll make a variable called time of last shot, and we'll make it public. Then on the weapon, we'll add a variable for time of last shot that will set with every shot. We're going to be setting it to the get time seconds. And let's move all this further to the right. Now in the character, let's put our weapon into a variable called weapon so that it can be accessed from the ABP. And now in the ABP, we're going to expose the time of last shot that we added in the control rig, and we're going to add another property access node, which will take the character and will take the character's weapon, and on the weapon, we're going to get the time of last shot. And now when you hit play, you'll see that the gun realistically kicks back with every shot. Now let's add ammo and reloading to our weapon. We're going to be using this animation montage, which has an add ammo notify, and it's supposed to play in the upper body group. So we need to play it on just the upper body in our ABP. For that, we need to go into ABP character and add another montage slot that isn't default. So we add a slot and configure it to be upper body. Now whenever we play this montage, it's going to be played in here and override the rifle ADS animation. In BP weapon, let's add an ammo variable that's going to have a default of 30 rounds, and let's add an event for reloading. It's going to play an animation montage. Let's make that a variable. And let's give it the rifle reload montage. We're going to be playing this on the skeletal mesh that is holding this weapon. So we need to get our root component, get its attached parent, and cast that to a skeletal mesh component. That will be the character mesh. Let's make a variable that tracks if we're currently reloading. And only do this if we're not reloading. And when we begin, we're going to set this to true. And if for any reason we stop playing this, we need to set it to false. And whenever we get an anim notify called add ammo, we're going to reset our ammo count to what it was in the default. So get self, get class, and get class defaults. And then specifically connect the ammo and hide unconnected pins. Now every time you play the reload animation at a specific point in that animation, it's going to reset your ammo count back to default. Now let's actually trigger the reloading. It's going to be two things that do it. An input action reload that directly calls the reload when you press R. And when you try to fire a shot, but you don't have any ammo, so you automatically reload. Let's move all this further to the right. First of all, we check if we're not reloading. So we can only do it if we're not already reloading. And then we check if we have enough ammo. If we do, we decrement the amount of ammo by 1. And then we do the actual shot. Otherwise, we simply trigger the reload. One more thing we need to do. when we destroy this weapon, when we unequip it, we need to stop the animation from playing so that we don't finish reloading a gun that isn't there anymore. So we're just going to get the same skeletal mesh component in which we're playing it. We're going to get its anim instance. And we're going to call montage stop. I'm going to tell it to stop this specific montage if it happens to be playing. And let's add a null check to it. To prevent this call from happening twice, we're going to show exec pins and hook it up like this, so that the same value used by both the isValid node and the montage stop. Now if we hit play and shoot the gun for a while, we'll see that the reloading happens automatically. And I can also just press R and see it happen. But you will notice that the gun is pointing exactly at where the camera is looking at, even during the reloading, while in the actual animation, it points to the side before coming back. Let's fix that. In our control rig, the aim weapon node currently always makes the gun point at the target, no matter what the animation does. So even if we play the reload animation here, no matter where we are in the animation, even during the part where the gun is supposed to point away, it's pointing exactly at the target. We need to tell the aim weapon node to let the animation drive the offset away from the target during a specific part of the animation. I've added a curve here called aim lock that is 1 for most of the animation, and during that, the gun should be able to deviate. So let's go to the curves. See that it's not here yet, and we need to import all the curves from the skeletal mesh. Now if we search for it, we see that the aim lock is there, and it's 1 during a specific part of the animation. So we just need to get the curve value, aim lock, and connect it to the aim lock weight here. Now if we play it, we'll see that the gun perfectly aligns with the animation. Now if we hit play and hit reload, we'll see that the gun goes away from the target the way it does in the source animation. However, you will see that the left hand no longer aligns with the hip from which it's supposed to grab the ammo. If you look down, it grabs it from somewhere behind. If you look up, it grabs it from somewhere in midair. Let's fix that. In the source animation, the character throws away the old magazine and grabs a new one from the hip, and then slots it in. In the control rig, this doesn't quite work because the character could be pointing up and then it tries to grab it from midair, or it could be pointing down and then the character clips through the body. We need to make sure that during that particular part of the animation, the left hand goes exactly where it was relative to the hip in the source animation. We can do that using a preserve limb placement node. We configure it to use the left arm, and we are going to keep the left hand in place relative to the reference element, which is going to be the left thigh. And it's only going to be true when this curve, L hand to L hip, is 1. So we just use another getCurveValue node configured with that curve. We connect it like this. Now everything done to the body by this part of the graph will be compensated for using this node. It looks at where the hand is relative to the hip before you do all this, and after all of this run, it restores it to have the same relative offset. Now if you hit play and reload, you'll see that the character always grabs the magazine from the left hip no matter where you're pointing. In this tutorial, we've made this character handle a rifle using just 2 animations. In the next one, we'll expand this into a proper weapon switching system that lets you switch between unarmed and multiple weapons. Project files are linked below.